The gift bag cut into my fingers as I stood at their gate, ribbon sliding, paper crinkling like a small apology. I had tied that ribbon twice. Tight, simple, the way I fold the sheets on Sundays. The sun was soft, late afternoon, and somewhere deeper in the house, a kettle clicked off and laughter rose like steam. I rang the bell. I waited. I imagined the small head, the soft cry. I imagined the weight I had been promised to hold. When the phone finally buzzed in my pocket, it was her name. "When will the birth be?" I typed, smiling at my own foolish excitement. The question looked tender on the screen. A mother asking permission to love. Her reply came in 3 words and an exclamation point that burned. He was born yesterday. Yesterday. A whole day had been lived without me. A day of white sheets and first breaths and tiny footprints pressed onto paper I would never see. My thumb froze above the keyboard. The bag slid lower. Inside, the knitted blanket I made in July, each square a quiet evening of television and chamomile, slipped and showed its corner of sky blue. I listened again for the kettle. I listened for my son's voice. I heard only dishes and the muffled joy of other people. My feet felt nowhere. At my age, I don't shout. I keep receipts. But there, on the sidewalk, I kept my breath. I looked down at my shoes, polished flats, the brown ones, the good ones, and thought of the last time I bought baby powder. It was a Thursday in 1995. I was 29, tired, and brave, because I had no choice. I delivered him without anyone holding my hand, then held him with both of mine. That day, I promised aloud to the fluorescent lights and the nurse with the kind eyebrows, "When he has his child, I will be there." Promises spoken to pain usually keep their shape. The gate didn't open. A car went by. The bag tore a little at the handle. I called my son. It rang, stopped, rang again. Straight to voicemail, his young voice saying my name like a reminder. I didn't leave a message. I have learned not to perform my hurt. There are better stages than a voicemail. A neighbor from across the street waved in that polite way people wave at women they think are harmless. I waved back. I am not harmless. I am patient. Simple doesn't mean blind. I read her message again. He was born yesterday. As if I were an afterthought that had been corrected. As if time itself could be pressed like a bruise. I typed congratulations and then erased it. I typed, "Is he healthy?" and erased that too. I finally sent "God bless the baby." It felt true enough to carry. From the second-floor window, a curtain shifted. I could tell the difference between a draft and a decision. Someone was standing just out of sight, breathing, choosing silence. The kettle clicked again, like a clock restarting. I tightened my fingers around the bag and felt the small square envelope taped inside. A card with my handwriting, my full name, the one on every receipt I have kept since the year I learned to be quiet. The gate stayed shut. My chest did not break. It filed. On the sidewalk, with the sun dropping to the level of my eyes, I understood this was not an oversight. It was choreography. A dance I hadn't been invited to, rehearsed for weeks with steps designed to keep me outside. And if they could keep me out of a birth, what else had they rehearsed? I turned from the gate, blanket rustling, and that's when I saw the envelope corner peeking from my tote, the one stamped by the registry 4 summers ago, my name at the top, black ink fading, and the first tremor of truth crinkling under my thumb. Subscribe to our channel. This helps our work reach more people. Morning light made a ribbon across my kitchen table, catching the steam of my coffee and the edge of the gift bag I hadn't opened again. I set the cup down without noise. Silence is easier to keep when your hands remember how. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. My papers, the small archive of a woman nobody thought was writing. I turned on my phone the way a nurse peels back a bandage, slow, prepared for air to sting. Notifications bloomed, not from my son, from everyone else. A cousin had shared a photo, white blanket, new ears folded like petals. The caption read, "Our angel arrived 8:17, 6:42 p.m. I repeated the numbers like a prayer I didn't believe in. August 17th, 6:42, yesterday. Another photo, my daughter-in-law, Her hair brushed, lipstick soft, her mother holding the baby as if grandmothers were standard issue for joy. Behind them, the hospital wall, pale green, a framed print of a lighthouse. I helped choose that paint for the bedroom at their house. Sage Mist, number 2143, 2 gallons, paid in cash because the card machine was down. I still have the handwritten receipt with the clerk's name, Demas, looped like a lace. I tapped my son's profile. New story. The room panned. Balloons, a tray with untouched gelatin, a tiny hat with bears. His voice, my boy's voice, said, "We did it." And someone laughed near the door. A woman's voice, not mine. The camera paused on a bouquet. I counted. 9 white lilies. They stain your hands if you touch the pollen. I know because I've lifted vases in church for 30 years. I called him. The ring stuttered, cut, returned. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I sent a text. "I'm here if you need anything." Then I deleted anything and wrote help. Then I erased help and wrote nothing. The kettle hissed. I didn't pour. I opened the cupboard, took down a jar, and folded the hospital screenshots into the space where I keep spare rubber bands. It's a habit. Pain first, then elastic. At noon, her message finally came. "Please don't drop by without checking first. We're resting. No punctuation at the end, only the period of a tone." I read it twice, then a third time, slower. I could taste the carefulness. People who plan a boundary often rehearse its cruelty until it sounds like reason. I typed, "Of course, when would be good?" The dots blinked, small and brave, then nothing. Time thickened. I washed the coffee cup, dried it, set it upside down. I wiped the table, even the corners that don't collect crumbs. I opened the window. A bus went by with that sigh city buses make, like they've been keeping everyone's secrets all morning. Around 3, my friend Anna called. "Did he call you?" she asked, voice pitched low, the way women speak when they expect to find a wound. "Not yet," I said. "The baby came yesterday." "Yesterday?" The word broke on her tongue. "I'm coming over." "You don't need to," I said. "Sit down where you are and bless the child for me." She swallowed. "You always take the high road." "I paved it," I said, and we both breathed, a small laugh landing like a sparrow and flying off. At 4, I took the bus to their street anyway, not to knock, just to see if the world still had my outline in it. The gate was empty. The curtains were quiet. On the porch, a package leaned, diapers, size newborn, with a card that read, "From the Martins." I wished I knew how to sign my love in ways that arrived where it was meant. I walked home the long way, passing the paint store. The door was open. Inside, fans spun, and someone was stirring a can that thumped like a slow heart. I stepped in. The young man at the counter looked up. "Not Demas. People move on without telling you." "Do you still carry Sage Mist?" I asked. He turned, scanning the wall of chips. "Yes, ma'am. Popular for nurseries." "Is it?" I said, and took a card anyway, the color trapped in a square, the size of a lie. Back home, the phone lit with his name. My stomach rose and fell before I touched the screen. "Hi, Mom," he said, voice wrapped in gauze. It all happened so fast. "I know," I said. "Is he healthy?" "Yes, he's perfect." "I'm glad," I said, and waited for the invitation he had promised me at 12 years old in a one-room apartment with a broken heater. "We're just tired," he said. "Maybe next week." There was a deadline then, laid quiet on the table like a contract, not on paper, but in me. I chose it without writing it down. "That's fine," I said. "Rest." I hung up gently, then wrote the date and time on a sticky note and pressed it to the inside cover of my folder. Some clocks don't tick, they count. I closed the window. The room held its breath. And that's when my phone screen lit with a new photo, her mother in my son's kitchen, holding my grandson under the soft green walls I paid for, a caption that said, "Home at last," and I felt the clock inside me start. The night didn't sleep. It stacked itself into narrow hours and rested its elbows on my chest. I lay on my back and listened to the refrigerator hum like a tired choir and the neighbor's dog patrol a dream. When the world won't hush, I go to the drawer where I keep what hurts clean. The folder, the pen, a small roll of tape. I opened the folder and there he was, my boy at 1 day old, a hospital Polaroid yellowing at the corners. I was 19 and sloppy with love, hair pressed back under a paper cap, a blanket creased like a map across my lap. No one stood at the foot of my bed. His father had already left for the night he never returned from. The nurse smiled with her eyebrows and said, "You did good, Mama." And I believed her because the room shook and then was still and there was breath where there had been pain. I remember the smell, bleach, bad coffee, new skin. I remember the way the curtain didn't close all the way and the cold slipped in like a rumor. I remember the promise I made to the ceiling because there was no one else to hear it. "When you have your child, I will be there," I told my son's soft ear, as if the future could be planted there like a seed. He blinked his milk-blue eyes and gripped my finger with nothing but instinct and God. In those years, I learned a language made of numbers. Rent due the 5th, light bill on the 11th, bus pass every 30 days, shift change at 2. 5 pairs of hands watched him while I cleaned rooms, folded sheets, scraped plates, and learned how gratitude is sometimes a job description. I wrote down each loan and each repayment in a notebook with a blue cover, or $40 for diapers from Dona Celia, or 15 for fever syrup from the pharmacy on Marabah Street, or $200 from the church when the landlord raised his eyebrow and the rent together. I marked every entry with the date and a small square in the margin. Check marks arrived like mercy. When he turned 12, we stood in line at the clinic for his shots. He had a gap between his front teeth and a habit of measuring his height against door frames. "When I have a son," he said, voice still pebbled with a child's echo, "you'll hold him first, okay?" I pressed my thumb into the meat of his palm and nodded. I did not explain logistics or pain or women's rules. I tucked the promise into the blue notebook right after bus tickets, 2 for school interviews, or 9/20s. Children make oaths without knowing they cost anything. Mothers accept them knowing they cost everything. Years passed. He became a man. Gentle shoulders, an easy laugh, the kind that fills a kitchen. The day he said he was getting married, I folded napkins and wrote down the date in the margin, 10/14, or $350 for suit alteration, paid. When they needed help with a down payment, I sold my rings, the thin gold band from the market and the one with the missing stone he used to flip between his fingers. I signed a paper to formalize the help. Temporary holding, the clerk called it. We put my name on the small plot attached to their house until the bank felt safe, until papers finished the slow walk paper loves to take. We agreed, all gentle and warm, that it would be our bridge. Bridges know who they carry. I pressed the Polaroid flat on the table and watched the baby I made look at me from 30 years ago. The clock on the microwave blinked 02:17 without shame. I could not blame a curtain for being closed or a nurse for having a schedule. I could not blame time. What I could do was count, promises made against promises kept, and I knew the deficit wasn't mine. I turned the Polaroid over. On the back, my thin handwriting said, "He scratched at 3:10 a.m., loud for his size." I smiled. Love is a ledger if you let it be. I slid the photo into a plastic sleeve and dated it again, 08/18, 2:19 a.m., not because the past had changed, but because the present had told on itself. I shut off the kitchen light. In the hallway, the night's quiet came back to my shoulders. "You did good, Mama," I told the woman I had been, and left the folder open on the table because morning would need proof too. At dawn, a bus sighed outside, and I understood something I had been avoiding. Wounds don't heal by themselves. They close because you stitch them. I pulled the chair in, laced my shoes, and reached for my tote. The corner of an old envelope poked my wrist, the one stamped by a registry on a Wednesday 4 summers ago. My name sat in black ink at the top like a witness who had kept their tie on all night. The seal shimmered under dust. I slid the envelope free and felt it hum with the patience of paper. If a promise is a seed, then this was the soil, and I had just remembered where I planted it. The envelope was thicker than it looked, the way grief is heavier than it sounds. I laid it flat and ran my fingernail under the old glue. The flap lifted with a soft sound, more sigh than tear. Inside, the contract I signed when the house was still a plan and the paint was still a chip in my pocket. Temporary holding, the helpful clerk had said, now a clerk in my memory, forever. I slid the pages out one by one, and the kitchen filled with paper light. My name, at the top, full, all 3 parts, the ones my mother gave me when she decided I would not be lost in any crowd. Beneath it, his name, my son's, and hers, aligned like a small family tree drawn in ink. I had initialed each page with the care of a woman who learned to read numbers before she learned to read disappointment. 0722 or $52 in fees, paid in cash. Demas at the paint store had given me change in coins that summer. I remembered the weight. I found the clause the bank had required, transfer to their names upon final approval, no earlier. It was a line you could miss if you were in a hurry or if someone wanted you to. I traced it with my finger and felt the ridge my pen had left the day we signed, the way a riverbed remembers water. When it's all finished, I had said in that office that smelled like toner and cool air, we'll move it over. They had nodded, and my son had kissed my cheek while she checked her lipstick in her phone. On the last page, the notary's stamp opened like a flower. Blue, official, full of petals you pay for. Date, 80904. Year ironed in alongside. I breathed. I turned the page again, looking for nothing, expecting calm. And there it was, not a shout but a nudge. A photocopy behind the original that I don't remember putting there. Same stamp almost, same font almost. A second set of initials, not mine, not tidy. Date, 0730. Weeks earlier than the bank's release. Transfer executed, it said, with a signature that had my name spelled like a stranger. I felt the old drawer in my chest slide open. Not anger, not yet. Accounting. I lifted the sheet and held it to the window. Light showed the tremble in the line of the forged S. My S has a habit of curling once and sitting down. This one stood straight and leaned right. Hers does that. I have watched enough gift tags to know. I laid both versions side by side, and the room changed temperature. If you live long enough, you learn to hear the tone paper uses when it contradicts itself. It is gentle and it is final. I checked the registry stamp numbers. The earlier one was smudged, as if pressed with a tired hand at the end of a day. The reference code sat 3 digits off. It would look like a typo to a person who wants to believe. I don't. I reached for my notebook and wrote, possible premature transfer, signature variation, stamp code discrepancy. I dated the page 08/18/0758 and underlined once. When you keep receipts, you learn to write like someone else may need to read it. The phone vibrated. Anna again. How are you? I found a thing, I said. What kind of thing? The kind that doesn't shout, I said. The kind that asks for light. Do you want me with you? Not yet, I said, flattening the papers with my palm. There's a place for witnesses and a place for silence. The doorbell rang. Unexpected, 9 a.m. I froze, not from fear, but from the etiquette I was raised with. You don't open a door with your mouth set to war. I tucked the contract back into the envelope and slid it under a placemat. I smoothed the cloth. I went to the door. It was the postman with a small padded package addressed to my son, redirected to my address by mistake. Our names still tangled in the postal system the way family stays tangled even when it shouldn't. This is yours? He asked. Not exactly, I said, signing anyway. Sometimes you sign to see what a signature wakes up. When he left, I brought the package inside and set it next to the envelope like 2 witnesses waiting to be sworn. I didn't open it. I don't take what isn't mine. But I stood there a long minute, listening the way you listen at a nursery door for the rhythm of a new life. My phone buzzed with a new message. Her name. We'll do a small welcome on Sunday. Just family. The word family bit. What time? I replied. 3, she wrote. Please come after 3. After 3, after the photos, after whoever else. I looked at the envelope under the placemat. I looked at the padded package with my address crossed out in blue. I looked at the calendar. Sunday was 4 days away. A clock started somewhere I could not see. I pulled the envelope back out and took a thin roll of tape. I sealed the flap again and wrote on the front in neat block letters, "For the light." Then I placed it in my tote, underneath the blue notebook and the Polaroid and the paint chip for Sage Mist, 2143. I put on my shoes. If a wound teaches you anything, it's where to press to feel a pulse. I locked the door, set my keys in my palm like a plan, and walked toward the place where paper answers questions people won't. And right at the corner, the bus sighed and opened its doors. I stepped on with the envelope against my hip and felt, for the first time since yesterday, that the day might say my name back. The city office opened at 9. I was there at 8:40 with a pen, a notebook, and the envelope heavy as a second heart. A line of people arranged their lives in plastic folders. A fan clicked at the ceiling, counting someone else's time. When the clerk with the pink nails called, "Next," I stepped forward like a woman who knows the weight of her own name. "I need to confirm a transfer," I said, sliding the photocopy under the glass. "Property tied to mortgage approval. There may be an irregularity." She adjusted her glasses and scanned the page. "Protocol number?" I pointed. She typed. The computer paused the way a person pauses when they're about to disagree. "Ma'am," she said, soft as a bruise, "this code belongs to a different sequence. Different day, different batch. See?" She turned the screen slightly. A table of entries scrolled. My eyes caught the mismatch, 3 digits off, like a skipped step in a staircase. "And this signature," I said, tapping the leaning S. She glanced down. "Not consistent with the original specimen on file." "Which means?" "It means," she said, choosing each word like a piece of glass, "if this was used to effect a transfer, it wasn't valid." I breathed once, twice. "Can I get a certified copy of the original and a record of any subsequent filings?" "Yes," she said. 18 are each. 10 days for the archive pull. 10 days. Another clock set itself on my table, next to Sunday at 3 and the memory of lilies. I paid. Coins rang like a small verdict. As she stamped my receipt, she lowered her voice. "If someone moved on this before approval, bank could contest title. You'd want to speak to them." "I will," I said. "Thank you." Outside, the sun had chosen brightness without warmth. I stood on the steps and dialed the bank's customer line, my folder balancing on my hip like a child used to. After 4 menus and 1 hymn of hold music, a man answered. I gave my full name, the file number, the month we signed, the clause about no earlier transfer. Numbers make me brave. He listened, typed, and then asked for my email to send current status documentation. I wrote it on a receipt with a firm hand. "Is there anything else on the account I should know?" I asked. His silence tilted. "There's a municipal tax notice that bounced last month," he said. "Returned mail. Due 0828. It's in the primary holder's name." "And who is the primary holder?" "Your name," he said. "Until final deed registration." I thanked him and hung up. Another deadline landed. 10 days to a bill that could turn into a lien that could turn into a problem no lullaby could fix. My phone buzzed. A message from her. "Sunday, 3 p.m. Please don't bring food. We have catering." I looked at the word catering until it lost its meaning and became only letters wearing perfume. I walked to the paint store. Demas was there today. Smile quick, memory quicker. "The sage color," he said when he saw me. "You liked it." "It looked honest on the wall," I said. He nodded. "That's rare for green." When I reached my building, an envelope waited at my door. Tape hurried, pen pressed hard. Urgent. Inside, a printed update to records. 2 pages, no letterhead, signature line flagged with a pink arrow. A note on a sticky square. "Can you sign today?" For simplicity. It wasn't her handwriting. It wasn't my son's. I held the pages up to the light and felt the weight of someone else's hurry. For simplicity is what people say when they've complicated you. I put the papers on the table and set my palm on them to feel if they were warm from the hand that delivered them. They were. I slid the update into a clear sleeve, dated the corner 08/18/1241, and wrote 1 word beneath it. Attempt. My phone lit with an unknown number. It rang, stopped, rang again. I pressed accept, lifted it to my ear, and before I said hello, I heard his breath, my son's, and a door whisper shut somewhere behind him. "Mom," he said, voice wrapped in careful. "I'm outside. Can I come up?" 3 words elbowed each other in my throat. "Of course. Why?" I opened the door and waited in the hallway like a woman who remembers how boys used to limp from scraped knees and say it was nothing. He looked tired in an expensive way. Haircut too recently, shirt soft enough to ask forgiveness on its own. He hugged me lightly, then stepped back to scan the apartment as if it were an exhibit that might accuse him. "We wanted to see you," he said, and the plural made its own announcement. "We?" I asked, and she stepped from the stairwell, holding a Tupperware of soup I hadn't asked for. Behind her, her mother appeared with a smile so bright it felt like a light pointed at a confession. "We brought lunch," my daughter-in-law said. "You must be busy." "Busy," I repeated. The Tupperware fogged. They moved toward my table with the choreography of people who have practiced this scene. "We're sorry we didn't call from the hospital," she began, seating herself without asking. "It was chaotic. The doctors, the visitors—" "Not all the visitors," I said. She colored, then recovered. "Right. Anyway, we're doing a small welcome Sunday, just family. We'd love you there." "After 3, I said. She smiled. "Yes." Her mother unfolded a neat stack of papers from her bag. Crisp, thirsty, familiar in their hunger. "While we're here," she said, "there's a little paperwork we forgot to finalize. Pure formality." I looked at my son. He flinched like a dog who hears thunder he can't locate. "It's just to tidy," he said, "so everything's in order for the baby." She slid the top sheet toward me, lined in spaces, fat with legalese, the signature flag a pink arrow like the one in the envelope at my door. "If you sign here," her mother said, tapping, "it streamlines the deed registration. The bank actually prefers it this way." "The bank told me," I said, "that they prefer the clause we signed, no earlier transfers." Her mother's smile grew a second set of teeth. "Of course. This is just an administrative update. Simplifies taxes. We wouldn't want a lien." The word dropped like a stone into my kitchen. My son looked at the floor. "Mom, please, we're exhausted. Help us keep things simple." Simple doesn't mean blind. I picked up the page. The S in my name, printed beneath the line, leaned right. I traced it with my thumbnail and watched the ink refuse to rise. "Who prepared this?" "The agent," she said. "He's a friend." "I prefer documents that arrive with letterhead and a name that survives daylight," I said, sliding the paper back. Her mouth tightened. "We can bring the agent by this afternoon." "That would be lovely," I said. "Bring his full name and certification, and the original request from the bank." "That's unnecessary," she said, and the room cooled. My son sat, put his face in his hands. "This is all too much," he whispered. "We just had a baby." "Yes," I said, softer than forgiveness, "and you will learn to protect him by telling the truth even when it stings." Silence gathered. The soup sweated on the table, pretending to be comfort. I stood, took 3 bowls, and set them down because feeding people is a muscle that doesn't let go. "Eat," I said, "and then we'll discuss the papers." They ate. The soup was seasoned like an apology. Almost, but not enough. When the bowls were empty, I carried the dishes to the sink and let water run like a curtain. My daughter-in-law rose, smoothing her blouse. "We'll come back at 4 with the agent," she said. "Bring your ID." "I keep it where I keep my receipts," I said, drying my hands. "I'll have both." They left with their choreography intact. The hallway held its breath until their steps faded. I turned off the tap, placed the pink arrow papers under the weight of my teapot, and looked at the clock. 3 hours to line up names with facts, signatures with hands, love with memory. My phone buzzed with a text from Anna. "Do you need me?" "Not yet," I typed. "Bring your eyes at 4. I opened my folder, the envelope humming under my palm, and that's when a shadow crossed my doorway, and a man's voice said my surname perfectly on the first try. He said my surname perfectly, the way people do when they've practiced on the walk up the stairs. A slim man, neat beard, navy folder under his arm like a promise with hinges. He extended a card between 2 careful fingers. No letterhead, just a name that sounded rented. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm here to help finalize the update. Congratulations on the grandchild." He smiled as if joy were a lubricant. Behind him, my son's shoulders sloped. My daughter-in-law stood to the side, straight as a fence. Her mother's perfume arrived before her words. I stepped back from the doorway. "Come in," I said, and the apartment received them like weather. He opened the navy folder and laid out pages with the grace of a magician, slow enough to charm, quick enough to hide the seam. "As we discussed," he said to her mother, not to me, "this removes the interim holder for tax efficiency, avoids exposure to municipal penalties, and streamlines the deed registration." He turned to me, warm. "All in your favor." "My favor," I said, "seems to be standing in the hallway." He laughed a professional laugh. "Merely procedure. If you sign here and here," a pink arrow winked, "we'll file this afternoon." He tapped the dates, already printed. Today. Today. The ink had not yet had time to dry on their decision. Anna arrived then, hair still wet from a rushed shower, eyes bright with use. "I'm here," she said. I kissed her cheek and watched the man adjust his smile to accommodate an audience. He set a pen on the line. A new one. Sleek, heavy, the kind that tries to bribe your hand. My son sat at the table and would not look at me. "Mom, please," he said. "We're drowning in forms. This is the last one." The word "last" lay between us like a dare. I read until the room blurred. No bank letter, no registry reference, no attached schedule from the original file. Just sentences dressed as mercy. "Where is the bank's request?" I asked. "Where is the registry number you'll file under? Where is your license?" He produced a phone and flashed a screen with a photo of a badge. The image caught my face, small, suspicious, in the reflection. He lowered it before I could read the number. "Everything's in order," he said. "Then you won't mind me photographing the documents," Anna said, lifting her own phone. His eyes tightened a fraction. "Internal paperwork," he said. "No copies." "Internal," I repeated. I looked at the clock, 3:27. I imagined Sunday at 3, the performance of welcome, the choreographed invitation to show up after the story had been told by other mouths. I looked at my son's hands, red at the knuckles from sanitizers and sleep loss, and remembered his 12-year-old oath spoken in a clinic line. "I cannot sign what I cannot later defend," I said. "Bring me the bank's letter and the registry reference." "That will delay," her mother said. The word snapped. "There's a tax notice. It could attach." "I know about the notice," I said. "It was returned to sender because someone changed the mailing address, mine without my permission." The room shifted an inch toward honesty. My daughter-in-law's mouth flattened. "You're making this hard." "I am making this clear," I said. "Clarity is the shortest road." The man packed a little too quickly, papers gathering like birds spooked. "We can revisit," he said. "But the window closes soon." They filed out, a procession of tidy impatience, until only my son lingered. He looked at the doorframe as if it might answer for him. "I thought you'd be happy if the house was secure," he said. "I would," I said. "I am. I also thought I'd be there when your son took his first breath." He nodded, swallowed, failed to speak. Then he left, without a promise. Anna put her hand on my back, small and steady. "You did right," she said, but my chest felt hollowed. When the door shut, the apartment remembered that I lived alone. I collected the pen he'd left behind. It was engraved with a company name that led nowhere. I dropped it into a drawer, the one where objects wait until they tell the truth. Night fell in a single motion. I boiled water and forgot the tea. I sat at the table with the contract in its envelope, and the photocopy that didn't belong to me, and the tax date blinking in my head like a small red light. On my phone, new photos lined up like a parade I hadn't been invited to. Her family in my son's kitchen, baby swaddled, toasts raised. A caption, "We keep our circle tight." I stared until the words unknotted and became knives. I turned the volume down on the world and breathed slow. The kettle clicked off. I didn't move. For the first time in years, I felt small in my own name. And then a message landed that bent the air. A number I didn't know, a single line. "Call me." I worked your file at the registry. I called before the echo finished crossing the room. This is she, I said, voice steadier than the rest of me. A woman answered, low and practical. You don't know me, she said. I processed the initial deed when the bank insisted on a temporary holder. I remember you. 3 names. Careful signature. Careful is the cost of certain kinds of life, I said. Why are you calling me? Because someone filed an update 2 weeks ago that didn't smell right, she said. A transfer dated before release. It hit my queue for cross-check. The signature specimen didn't match. I flagged it. Yesterday, it disappeared from the system as corrected. That's not procedure. Paper, irritated, had found its voice in her. I stood. The room rose with me. Do you have a copy? I printed one before it vanished, she said. And the stamp number they tried to reuse. She paused. I shouldn't be telling you this over the phone. Then tell me in person, I said. I'll come to you. Not at the office, she said. I like my job. There's a cafe 2 blocks east, 20 minutes. I wrapped the envelope, the photocopy, my blue notebook in a scarf, and slid them into my tote like provisions for weather. Anna reached for her keys. I'm coming, she said, not asking. I nodded. The apartment locked behind us with the sound of a hinge being told the truth. The cafe smelled like roasted patience and milk. The woman sat near the back, hair in a low twist, hands that looked like they could tell time by the weight of paper. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside, a printout of the update, my name leaning where it never has, the earlier date that shouldn't exist, and a registry note in gray letters, pending, cross-check required. A second sheet, a scan of the system log showing a user ID overwrote the flag. Who's that ID? I asked. She shrugged. Generic logins hide specific hands, but the initials match someone who freelances for an agent that works your neighborhood. She let the sentence end where the risk began. Anna read, lips moving. They thought you would sign to fit their mistake, she said. They thought I would sign to hide their theft, I said. My voice surprised me. Quiet even, with a blade tucked under the blanket. The woman sipped her coffee. There's more, she said. A municipal tax notice bounced back because the mailing address changed. It's in your name until the deed finalizes. If it goes unpaid, the lien attaches to you. That usually gets elders to sign, fast. She held my gaze, eyes kind but unwilling to pity. I'm sorry. Don't be, I said. You called. She exhaled through her nose, relief and worry sharing a chair. I printed the original deed, the clause requiring the bank's release letter, the approval date, and the absence of any such letter. I also brought the stamp exemplar from the day in question. She tapped the envelope. You will need these. Paper thickened the air. I touched the edges with the same care I reserve for baby heads and fresh bread. What do I owe you? I asked. A coffee, she said. And maybe a story someday about how somebody didn't get away with it. We paid. Outside, the street wore afternoon like a clean shirt. What now? Anna asked, the envelope tucked against her ribs like a child. Now I bring a light where they planned a shadow, I said. Sunday at 3, I added. They invited me. Do you want to go before? No, I said. I want them to feel how heavy a quiet can be. At the corner we passed the paint store. Demas lifted a hand through the glass. I thought of sage mist, of rooms that look honest in certain light and green in others. We teach walls too much, I said. Back home, I spread the papers on the table. Evidence blooms best when it can breathe. I photographed each page twice, uploaded to a drive I keep for things I can't afford to lose, printed duplicates, dated every margin. I placed the municipal notice deadline, 08 to 28, on a sticky square in the center like a red 0. I wrote a letter to the bank requesting written confirmation of the release date and copied the phrase, no earlier transfer. I phoned the cafe woman back. If they push, I said, can you testify that the system showed a premature update and a flag that vanished? If my job survives it, she said, but I can write a memo that describes process without naming names. That will do, I said. I don't want blood. I want the truth to stand up. Evening came with its small rehearsed kindnesses, the neighbor's dog, the first window lighting across the street, the bus sighing. I stacked the file. I slid a thin ribbon around it because I like my revolutions tidy. My phone vibrated. My son. Sunday, he said. 3. Come a little later, okay? Of course, I said, and heard myself choose calm like a clean dress. Mom, he added, voice small. Don't embarrass us. I looked at the file. I looked at the clock. I looked at the place in me that remembers nurses' eyebrows and promises spoken to ceilings. I don't embarrass, I said. I reveal. He swallowed. Okay. The line went soft. I set the file by the door. I turned off the lights. In the dark, paper whispered to paper and settled into a shape that would not be knocked over easily. And just before sleep took me, a thought sat on the edge of the bed and waited. If the stamp didn't belong to my day, whose hands stamped it into mine? Morning arrived the way truth does, without apology. I woke before the bus sighed and laid the file on my lap like a sleeping cat. The ribbon slid free. Paper breathed. I dressed in the dark, slate skirt, cotton blouse, shoes that remember how to stand. At my age, I don't shout. I keep receipts. The bank branch on Rua Aurora opens at 9, but doors often bend for women who know which hinge to touch. I was there at 8:37, waiting with the couriers and a man carrying a plant he didn't love. When the guard lifted the grate, I stepped in with the tide of errands and sat opposite a woman whose nameplate said R. Braga, titling. Her hair was pinned like a decision. I need clarity, I said, placing the deed, the clause, the memo request, and the municipal notice in a neat fan. Transfer attempted before release. Signature not mine. Tax notice in my name due 08/28. I want your process in writing. R. Braga didn't blink at my arrangement. She read the way doctors listen, first for breathing, then for bleed. Protocol? She asked. I slid the numbers. She typed. Her screen threw pale light across her cheekbones, then she printed 2 pages and underlined a line with a nail as tidy as law. Have you been through something similar? Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every comment. It's important for us to know we're not alone. Release is scheduled 0904, she said. Any transfer before that is invalid and triggers a hold. She looked up. If we're made aware. You're aware, I said, placing the flagged copy from the registry and the cafe woman's process memo between us like a bridge. I am making you aware now. R. Braga exhaled carefully. I need to escalate, she said, picking up the phone. While she waited, I wrote the time, 0912, on my pad. Somewhere, a coin machine clicked. Somewhere, a printer spat more seconds onto paper. The line picked up. She spoke in the dialect of offices, measured, minimal, with the weight of someone who has seen storms and learned to name the wind. She hung up, then stamped a paper in blue. Temporary hold. Title. Actions frozen pending review. The stamp thudded like a small gavel. Take this, she said, sliding me the original and a certified copy. Bring it to the municipal office next door. It prevents the lien from attaching while we verify. Also, she turned to her keyboard, I'm adding your email for all notices and locking address changes until after finalization. She glanced at me, almost a smile. People get creative. Creativity should paint walls, I said, not signatures. She printed one more sheet. This is a letter from the bank stating the release date and the clause requiring no earlier transfer. Signed by me. If someone pressures you, show them this. If they continue, call me. She wrote a direct number in pen. Pen ink is a promise when used by the right hand. I thanked her with my whole posture. At the municipal desk, a clerk with a sunflower pin tasted the stamp with her eyes, nodded, and entered a note. Hold acknowledged. Billing paused until 0915. She initialed with a flourish that made her smile at herself. I like my J, she said. I liked it too. It looked like a hook pulling a truth to the surface. Outside, the street wore sun like a well-pressed shirt. Anna texted, News? I sent a photo of the hold stamp and the bank letter. She replied with a row of hands, palms up, the posture of praise. By noon, I had scanned and uploaded everything twice, then printed duplicates for a second folder. I slid the original file back into its ribbon and placed the bank's blue stamp on top, where even doubt could see it. I ate a piece of toast as if it were a treaty. My phone buzzed. Her message. Sunday, still at 3. Bring your ID for the baptism book. The audacity bracketed itself. I will, I typed, and a document you may find instructive. A pause, then, no need. It's a celebration. Celebrations are safer, I wrote, when facts have chairs. I set the phone down. The room felt different. Same walls, new gravity. Justice did not arrive in a trumpet. It set a hold, adjusted an email, gave me a number in ink. Small levers move larger doors. At 3, I ironed my blouse. At 4, I called the parish office and asked for the schedule. Baptism at 3, the secretary said. Families gather at 2:45. I listened to the way she said families and thought of circles drawn with erasable markers. Thank you, I said, and wrote the priest's name in my notebook. Letters shape outcomes. I placed the second folder in my tote, slid the cafe woman's memo into the inner sleeve, and closed the clasp. And when evening reached into the room and turned the light softer, a new certainty took its chair at my table and stayed. On the folder's tab, I wrote a single word, Sunday. Saturday practiced being quiet. I let it. I moved through rooms like a tide that touches everything and steals nothing. Dusted the frames, folded laundry, made soup the way time taught me, slow, with a bay leaf that knows patience. The file sat on the table, composed, a witness at rest. At my age, I don't shout. I set scenes. I called no one, and called instead to order the little things that keep a life from shaking. I wrote a list for Sunday. 1. Arrive at 2:40. Sit near the aisle, 3rd row, left. 2. Carry the folder in a plain tote. No performance. 3. Speak only to the priest and my son, alone, before footsteps multiply. 4. Offer the documents. Request nothing but correction. 5. Leave if voices climb. Dignity is volume control. I pinned the list under a magnet shaped like a pear. The magnet has held worse. In the afternoon, I walked to the church, not to trespass on sanctuaries or set traps, but to sit in the back pew and see how light behaves. Stained glass threw soft color on stone. A maintenance man wound the brass clock above the nave with hands that had never dropped a minute. I noted the side door, the sacristy window, the small table where the baptismal book would rest. My palms tingled the way they do when babies cry and when paper tells the truth. Both are holy. On my way out, I found the parish secretary in her office, sleeves rolled, calendars open like gentle dooms. "Excuse me," I said. "May I leave an envelope for Father Miguel? It contains a note regarding the baptism book." My voice wore calm like a cardigan. She nodded, took the envelope I had addressed in careful block letters, for Father Miguel, before 2:40 Sunday, and placed it on top of a stack with a paperclip that knew it held a hinge. Inside I had written, "Father, my name is all 3 names. I am the temporary deed holder of the child's home and the paternal grandmother. My name was used in an irregular property filing connected to this family. I will not make a scene during a sacrament. I will ask only that my legal relation, paternal grandmother and deed donor, be recorded correctly in the baptismal book. I have documents. If there is discomfort, I will step outside. Truth does not need a microphone." I signed with the pen that has always written my bills and my prayers. At home, I labeled the folders, originals and copies. Originals got the ribbon. Copies got a paperclip that could survive a storm. I tucked a small lavender sachet into the tote because justice should smell like something other than fear. Anna called. "Do you want me to sit behind you?" "Yes," I said. "1 row back, 1 seat over. If I falter, breathe out loud." "That I can do," she said, and I felt less alone in the architecture of what comes next. Night approached in the shape of a water glass on my bedside table. I read my son's text again, "Don't embarrass us," and kissed it like a wound. Then I turned the phone face down and gave darkness the room. The folder slept under my chair. Sunday dressed the sky clean. I put on a navy dress and a pearl I can afford. Single, small, honest. The bus ride hummed the same hymn it always hums when you need it to arrive on time. I stepped off 2 stops early to feel the day remember me. The church courtyard smelled of wax and new haircuts. Families gathered in clumps that looked like punctuation. Exclamation at the steps, commas under the trees. I checked my watch. 2:38. I walked to the side door. A sacristan with keys like a choir let me pass when I said, "For Father Miguel, please." In the sacristy, Father read my note as if each word were a bead on a cord. He looked up, eyes older than his face. "You wrote this without heat," he said. "Heat cooks soup," I said. "Truth needs air." "May I see the documents?" he asked. I showed him the bank letter, the hold stamp, the clause with no earlier transfer, the registry memo. He frowned in the direction of sin. "We record families as they are," he said gently. "If your name bears the weight you describe, it belongs in the book." I breathed. "Thank you." "Will this cause strife?" "Strife is already here," I said. "I am offering it a chair." Footsteps approached, the sound of my son's shoe, the cadence I birthed. My hand found the folder's edge. Father closed the file with reverence, then met my son at the doorway. "Before we begin," he said, "there is a matter of record." My son's gaze slid to the folder, then to me, then to the font. "Mom," he whispered, warning and plea in one breath. "At my age," I whispered back, steady as the water in the bowl, "I don't embarrass, I correct." Behind him, my daughter-in-law stepped into the light, cheeks powdered, jaw set. The baptismal book lay open on the table like a waiting verdict. And as Father lifted his pen, the side door opened, and the woman from the registry, hair in a low twist, eyes full of process, stepped in, a small envelope in her hand, and said to the priest in a voice that carried just enough, "I believe this belongs with the record." The air in the sacristy changed shape, not heavier, just honest. The woman from the registry stood there, envelope pressed flat between her palms, like something that might bruise if mishandled. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said to Father Miguel, "but this document was flagged under this family's property file. It concerns the donor listed as the grandmother." Her eyes found mine for half a breath. Acknowledgement, not alliance. Father Miguel looked from her to my son, then to the open baptismal book. "We'll proceed," he said gently, "but we'll do so in truth." He took the envelope. Inside was the printout of the canceled transfer, the one she'd saved before it vanished. He read the dates, the smudged stamp, the signature that leaned the wrong way. The priest was a man used to weddings, funerals, and mid-level lies. He read it slowly. "This signature," he said, "does not belong to the same hand." My son's shoulders dropped an inch, and his wife's fingers tightened on the baby blanket. Her mother, standing behind them, smiled the way people do when their mask begins to itch. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "Father," I said, "that document was used to attempt a property transfer in my name. The bank froze all actions. I am not here to accuse, only to record things as they are, as you do in that book." He nodded. "Then your name will appear as it appears in the deed." Her mother stepped forward, voice honeyed with control. "This is inappropriate. This is a child's baptism, not a courtroom." I looked at her, really looked. The manicure hiding beneath a glove, the scarf arranged to look humble. "A courtroom has verdicts," I said. "A baptism has names, and names matter." The registry woman bowed her head slightly. "Father, the official record now shows the transfer frozen. Until the review concludes, legal ownership remains under her name." Father Miguel folded the page, placed it under the baptismal register, and said, "Then her name belongs here too." The pen moved. My son watched it carve the truth into paper. The sound was small, a whisper of ink against permanence. The child gurgled, as if testing the air for honesty. I stepped back. "That's all I needed," I said softly. "Proceed." The ceremony began. Water touched skin. People murmured prayers that didn't know my story. My eyes didn't water. They filed. After, while the others took photos by the candles, my son came to me in the narrow hallway that smelled of lilies and stone. He didn't speak right away. He just held the baby close, face buried in the newborn's hair. "I didn't know about the second signature," he said. "She said it was just to fix paperwork." I looked at him, This man who used to sleep with his hand in mine. You wanted peace, I said. But peace built on silence rots. He nodded once, eyes wet but not yet redeemed. Mom, he whispered, what happens now? I brushed the baby's cheek with one finger. Now, I said, we let truth do what it always does. Echo. He tried to hand me the baby, but I shook my head. Not yet, I said. Hold him while you still can without shame. I left through the side door. Behind me, I heard her mother's voice rising, low, angry, calculating, and Father Miguel's calm reply, records do not lie, Señora. They reveal. Outside, the air was clean with consequence. By Monday morning, the story had found its own road. The bank called first, R. Braga's voice crisp, professional, but carrying that tremor people have when a file they once handled suddenly matters. Mrs. Surname, she said. The internal review confirmed your signature was falsified. We've initiated a fraud report. The attempted transfer is void. You remain the legal owner until proper conveyance. Thank you, I said. Please forward a certified letter. It's already on the way. Paper travels faster when guilt is pushing it. By noon, Anna sent a message. People are talking. She meant the parish group chat, where someone had asked why the priest had paused before reading the baptism names. Someone else replied. There was a document, something about property. Another. Her name's on the deed. Imagine. Truth doesn't need volume. It just needs repetition. By evening, my phone rang again. My daughter-in-law, voice brittle with fear wrapped in pride. You humiliated us, she said. Everyone is asking questions. I didn't humiliate you, I said. You brought that paper into a church. I brought the truth. You could have spoken to us privately. I tried. You sent an agent with a forged pen. There was breathing on the line, fast, shallow. Then the quiet click of defeat, wearing denial. Her mother called next. She didn't bother with small talk. You've ruined my daughter's reputation. No, I said. She did. I simply introduced her to the record. She hissed something about lawyers. I let her finish, then said calmly, tell them to bring the blue stamp and the registry code. I like when people come with exhibits. When the call ended, I set the phone down and opened my folder. I added the printed fraud confirmation, dated and initialed by the bank. The file was heavy now, not with paper, but with consequence. That night, Anna came over with coffee and small joy. They'll retreat now, she said. People like that can't survive silence. I don't want their suffering, I said. Only their stillness. On Tuesday, Father Miguel sent a short note. Your name has been entered as the child's grandmother and home donor. The baptismal book reflects the truth. May peace find all of you. I placed it in the folder under the first contract. Pages that once betrayed me now testified for me. By Wednesday, my son came alone. He looked older, or maybe finally grown. He stood in my kitchen doorway, same place where once he'd stood with forged papers and soup. Mom, he said. Yes. I told her mother to stay away. I told her I'd make this right. You can't unwrite ink, I said, but you can sign better things. He looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. The lemon light, the modest shelves, the table that never lied. I don't deserve forgiveness, he said. Forgiveness isn't a prize, I said. It's a boundary. Mine stays intact. He nodded. Then softly, can I bring him next week? Just me and him? I hesitated. Next week, I said. If you come without noise. When he left, the house felt lighter, not empty, but aired out, like a room after a storm finally releases its breath. Outside, neighbors were talking in careful tones. I didn't listen. I had soup to finish. And when the kettle clicked off, I smiled at the sound, the same sound that once marked humiliation. Now it sounded like punctuation. Because when paper speaks, even whispers turn into justice. Consequences don't sprint, they organize. By Friday, the registry posted a bulletin. Temporary suspension pending investigation for the freelance agent whose badge had reflected my suspicion back at me. The statement didn't name him, but paper loves a pattern, and the neighborhood recognized the cut of his navy folder. People who had once bragged about fast paperwork began to look at their deeds the way you look at a tooth that aches only when you press it. The bank's fraud report traveled fast through inboxes that didn't know my name last week. A compliance officer phoned to confirm details for their file and used phrases like chain of custody and instrument integrity. I wrote the date in my notebook and underlined it once. The municipal clerk with the pretty J called too. Her voice was careful joy. "Notice rerouted to the correct party," she said. "The attempted change of address is logged." She didn't say who. She didn't need to. In the ledger of the week, arrows had stopped pointing at me. Her mother felt it first. Influence shrinks when light finds it. The parish committee that had always reserved her a front pew now found the reserve sign in the wrong drawer. The catering company she name-dropped stopped extending credit until accounts regularize. A florist texted Anna a sentence trimmed of pity. She asked me to charge to the house account. "The house account is my signature until the bank releases it," the florist declined. Paper, everywhere, tightened its face. My daughter-in-law moved through it like someone wading in a dress, proud, soaked, stubborn. I do not hate her. I don't even wish her pain. I wish her weight, the kind that teaches a back how to stand. It was her mother who called with the sound of a storm that can't find a window to rattle. "I will sue you," she said, "for defamation, for interference, for making a stamp say its own date out loud," I asked. "For insisting a church book spell a grandmother's name correctly?" I kept my voice like cooled metal. "Bring your suit. Bring witnesses who don't lean right when they write my S." She hung up and rang back twice more, the second time with quiet in her throat. People who traffic in pressure fear the day their hands slip on the dial. The registry woman sent a short message. "Internal review confirmed unauthorized system access. My memo is now official." I printed it, dated it, and slid it behind the bank's hold. The file was a spine now. I could feel it hold me when I stood. My son arrived Sunday evening with a bag of groceries, as if the weight could count for something. He set them down and looked at me like a boy on a beach, waiting for a wave to tell him if it will break. "She's angry with me," he said. "Her mother's worse." "Let them be angry with the right person," I said. "You helped build a structure that needed a lie to stand up. You can help dismantle it without throwing bricks." "How?" he asked. "By telling the truth in every room," I said. "Start there." Monday, a letter arrived on heavy paper, the kind offices use when they want their nouns to sound expensive. The agent's license suspended pending inquiry. Any filings he touched would be audited. A second letter, plainer, from the tax office. Acknowledgement that the attempted address change originated from a device registered to her mother's event business. There would be a fine. There would be a record. Records don't bleed. They bookmark. I placed both letters in the file, then stood at my window and watched the street consider its evening. Somewhere, a dog barked and stopped when it remembered it didn't need to prove anything. Her mother appeared below, speaking into her phone, face tight, hair refusing to participate in her anger. She glanced up toward my building as if windows could blush. They don't. They reflect. The phone rang. An unknown number resolved into a lawyer's assistant. He spoke in clauses that had been taught manners. "Our client wishes to avoid escalation," he said. "She proposes a public clarification. No transfer occurred, no consent was given, any confusion was administrative. Add that the attempted address change was unauthorized," I said. "Add her apology to the priest for the interruption of a sacrament." Silence on the line. "I will take that back." "Take back more," I said. "Tell her to return the keys she had copied." There it was, the small gasp that proves you aimed true. "What keys?" he asked. "The ones to a house that still uses my name," I said. "I keep count." He ended with a promise to revert shortly. I wrote the time. I poured tea. I smiled at the steam because it rose without pretending to be anything else. By Thursday, the clarification sat on parish bulletin boards and neighborhood chat threads. 3 sentences, precise, unsentimental, stamped with a law firm logo that looked like it charged by the comma. People screenshot truth even when they don't share it. Her mother didn't wave in the market. Her perfume got louder. Status is expensive to maintain when paper won't co-sign. I didn't dance. I watered my plants and cleaned my stove. Justice isn't a party, it's a ledger balanced to zero. And with the ledger balanced, a question remained, waiting at the edge of my table like a glass about to be filled. What do I do with the house that bears my name and their life inside it? I woke early, washed my face in water that had remembered the night's cool, and set the file on the table beside a pen that only writes when I mean it. The bank's release date approached. A piece of mail with a clean blue stamp arrived. Final approval, EO 904. The bridge we built with my name had reached the far bank. Bridges aren't meant to be homes. I called R. Braga. I'm ready, I said. I want a conveyance that honors the truth. She understood before I finished. We can draft a deed of gift with acknowledgement, she said. It will state the original arrangement, the funds you provided, and the correction of record. No backdating, no gray. Clean. Clean, I repeated. And 2 conditions. Name them, she said, pen audible on paper. 1. A written apology addressed to Father Miguel for the disruption and to me for the attempted misuse of my name. 2. My name remains on a small addendum, founder of the home, not as owner, but as memory. She paused. It can be appended as a notarized statement recorded with the deed. Then do that, I said. People forget. Paper remembers. I called my son. Come by, I said. Alone. He arrived with hands empty for once. We sat at the table where lies had tried to make a nest. I will sign the house to you both after the release, I said. His eyes filled and did not spill. On paper in the morning. But hear me, I will not sign my silence. I understand, he said. Do you? I asked. Because my forgiveness isn't a rug. It doesn't hide dirt. It marks where feet go. He nodded. I will apologize to Father. I will apologize to you. In writing. Good, I said. And you will keep your mother-in-law's hands off your mail. He winced, then laughed, small and clean. Yes, ma'am. We met at the bank the next day. R. Braga guided us through nouns. The deed said what happened and what would not happen again. My pen moved without tremor. His pen moved with one that softened as it went. My daughter-in-law watched, jaw unclenched. When the notary asked if there were any additional statements, I handed over the page I had typed with my old laptop, each letter squared to its line. I, all 3 names, transfer my temporary holding as agreed upon at origin, after bank release, and record that this home exists because of my contribution and care. May it shelter my grandson in truth. I sign without rancor and without amnesia. I signed. The notary stamped. The sound echoed like a door closing quietly in a good house. Outside, my daughter-in-law cleared her throat. I'm sorry, she said. The words were unadorned, and therefore almost beautiful. I was ashamed of needing you. I thought if we erased your name, I could feel bigger. Needing isn't shameful, I said. Erasing is. She nodded, eyes shining at the edges. Would you meet him? Properly. No cameras, no one else. Yes, I said. Tomorrow, 10. That night, I cleaned my living room like a chapel. Fresh linen on the couch back, a small vase with 3 stems, nothing loud. I set out the blue notebook and the old Polaroid, my boy at 1 day old, and the tiny knitted blanket that had waited in a bag at a gate. Morning came in on quiet feet. When they arrived, she held the baby without performance. He smelled like milk and decisions not yet made. She placed him in my arms, and the world corrected itself by degrees. His name? I asked. She told me. It fit his face. I said it aloud to teach the air where to rest. We sat with the small person who had no idea what paper had done for him this week. I counted his breaths, not because I needed to, but because mothers count for sport. My son touched my shoulder once, light as punctuation. Before they left, I opened a drawer and took out a single key on a plain ring. I placed it in my son's palm. This is not to your house, I said. It's to mine. You may use it only when you come alone, with the baby, and with respect. Boundaries are doors with locks and welcome mats. He closed his fingers around the key as if it were an oath. I hear you, he said. When the door closed, the room kept their warmth and returned my quiet. I made tea and stood by the window. Across the street, someone watered plants and waved without knowing they were saluting a treaty. The file sat on the table, slimmer now, a bridge crossed, a deed clean, a statement recorded. I tied the ribbon loosely and placed it on the shelf where I keep the things that taught me. And in the stillness that followed, a memory knocked, soft, insistent, the kind that doesn't ask to be let in. It finds its own way to the table. Morning wore a soft gold, and the city forgave itself for yesterday's noise. I ironed a handkerchief the way my mother taught me, corners square, steam rising like a small ghost. On the table, the file sat with its ribbon loosened, no longer a weapon, only a record. Beside it, the Polaroid waited. My boy 1 day old, my eyes too big for my face, wonder unedited. I slipped the photo into an envelope and wrote 2 words on the front in my neatest hand. For later. I took the bus with a jar of soup wrapped in a towel, because new homes need soup more than speeches. The driver nodded, the way people nod when they've seen you at your brightest and your dimmest, and know you'll pay exact change. I sat near the window and watched the street rehearse its routines. A woman dragged a hose. A bakery arranged its first tray of bread. A boy chased a soccer ball with shoes that wanted to be faster than they were. Everywhere, small mercies doing their shifts. At their gate, I did not ring right away. I looked at the paint. Sage mist holds different truths at different hours, and thought of all the names rooms have learned to carry. Breath in, breath out. I rang. My son opened with the quiet smile of a man who has met his own shadow and decided to keep walking. He kissed my cheek without hurry. "He's awake," he said. "He likes the light." "Then we already agree on something," I said. Inside, the house had lost its performance. No bouquets, no curated corners, only the honest mess of a new person. A drying rack of tiny shirts, a bassinet near the window, fatigue folded into the sofa. My daughter-in-law looked up, hair unpinned, face plain in the gentlest way. "Good morning," she said. It fit. I set the soup on the counter, removed the towel, and washed my hands in their sink like a small blessing. When I turned, he was there, my grandson, eyes the color of promises before they're tested. I didn't reach for him. I waited until she offered. She did, wordless. He settled into my arms with the gravity that belongs only to infants and truths. Wait is a kind of honesty. I rocked him slowly, counting breaths because mothers count even when they're not required to. "Hello, little witness," I whispered. "You don't know it, but paper fought for your crib." He blinked, then made a sound not yet word, not yet need, just presence. My son watched us from the doorway. "I wrote the letters," he said softly. "To Father Miguel, to you." "I received them," I said. "They filed well." He nodded and leaned his head against the frame like a boy who finally found the spot that holds him. After a while, I placed the envelope on the shelf next to a small stuffed bear. "What is it?" she asked. "A photograph," I said, "of a day that made this day possible. For later, when he asks how things begin." She touched the envelope's edge. "Will you stay for lunch?" "Yes," I said. "But first, teach me his name like a prayer." She spoke it. I repeated it until the vowels obeyed. When it was time to lay him down, I rested him in the bassinet and smoothed the blanket. A blue I'd knitted in quiet hours, now finally home. The sun crossed the room to meet his face. He wrinkled and returned to sleep, confident that the world would hold until he woke again. I stood there a long time, not claiming, not guarding, simply witnessing what the week had repaired. Then I turned to my son and daughter-in-law and said, "My door is open on Tuesdays, 2 to 4, no fanfare, no audience. Come if you want soup and silence." "We will," she said, and her voice held the one apology that matters, a new habit. On my way out, I paused by the threshold. "One more thing," I said, without ceremony. "Locks are for night, boundaries are for noon. Learn both." "We will," he said. The bus home felt lighter. I carried nothing but a spoon wrapped in a napkin and the scent of milk in my sleeves. At my building, the neighbor's dog didn't bark. He recognized a woman carrying peace. Back at my table, I placed the file on the shelf above the stove. where heat has taught me to respect distance, not to hide it, just to let it rest. I poured tea and watched the steam rise straight, without argument. Some stories end with applause. Mine ends with inventory. A folder closed, a key on a plain ring, an envelope labeled for later, a Tuesday with its door set like a clock, and a sentence I keep for days when rooms forget what they owe. At my age, I don't shout, I document. And when the time comes, I open the file and let the truth speak in a voice even quieter than mine. If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.